and good evening.
Hello.
Bonsoir. I'm very, very happy to present Danielle Chevillon for part 2 of ISCO France 2024. Translate, Jim?
Cliff est très content de pouvoir accueillir Danielle ici pour cette édition de ISCO France 2024.
Danielle is one of Europe's most experienced shiatsu teachers and practitioners.
C'est une des praticiennes en Europe les plus compétentes dans le domaine du shiatsu.
And I'm really looking forward to getting to know her a bit better and to hearing about her story, her shiatsu story this evening.
Et Cliff est très content de pouvoir en entendre plus sur sa vie et tout ce qu'elle va pouvoir nous raconter ce soir.
So welcome, Danielle.
Eh ben, bienvenue, Danielle.
Merci de m'avoir invité.
Thank you for inviting me today.
You're most welcome. So here we have it. Zen Shiatsu, the feminine perspective, or héritage Masunaga au féminin, but you could say it probably better than me in French, right?
Donc, ça, c'est le titre de la présentation de Danielle aujourd'hui, l'héritage au féminin, le Zen Shiatsu, un héritage de Masunaga au féminin.
Okay, so Daniela asked me some questions. This is a picture of her, by the way, in an amazing lake. Where is this again, Daniela?
In Argentine, north of Argentine.
Wow, look at that. Fantastic. Danielle wanted to know a few things. She wanted to know, where are you?
Donc, d'où est-ce que vous êtes? C'est le premier sondage qu'on va faire. On va en faire plusieurs pendant cette séance pour en savoir plus sur vous. Et donc, d'où est-ce que vous êtes?
Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll and we'll find out how many of you are from France, Europe, the Americas, Australia and Asia, or other. Okay, look, and there's your answer. About half the people are from France, 50% from France. So there we go.
Okay.
And the rest are from Europe, America, and other.
Eh ben oui.
Yeah. And the second question that she wanted me to ask you is, what style of shiatsu do you practice? Zen shiatsu, Namakoshi, TCM 5 elements, quantum shiatsu, that's Pauline Sasaki, or other. So I'll run that poll again and we'll see what we've got.
Donc, le deuxième sondage, la deuxième type de question, c'est quel type de shiatsu est-ce que vous pratiquez? Est-ce que c'est le Zen shiatsu, Namikoshi, un shiatsu des 5 éléments sur la médecine chinoise, quantum shiatsu ou autre chose?
Yep. And look, that's your answer. 70% Zen shiatsu. 4% Namakoshi, 14% TCM, 2% quantum shiatsu, and then 12% other. We don't know what that is, but so that's your answer. So half are French and 67% Zen shiatsu. So there we are. Okay, so over to you. Here we go. How you came to shiatsu.
Vas-y, Danielle, tu peux commencer.
I can start.
You can
Je t'en prie.
Alors, comment je suis venue au shiatsu? Comment le shiatsu est venu à moi dans une époque, c'est-à-dire la fin des années 60, 1968, on va dire exactement, où le shiatsu n'était pas du tout connu en France. J'en avais pratiquement jamais entendu parler, en tout cas. Et qu'est-ce qui a fait que moi, j'ai été attirée par ça? Bon, on va dire que d'abord, les choses du corps m'intéressaient depuis toute petite, puisque je faisais de la danse depuis toute petite. Et les choses de l'esprit aussi m'ont attirée. Donc, l'année de ma terminale, où j'ai fait une terminale en philo, j'ai été très, très, très interpellée par la philosophie, la psychologie, et je pense que c'est...
I think you just better get Julian to translate that before you tell us any more.
Yes, that's very good. Merci, Danielle. Pour nos anglophones, for our English speakers, people out there. So Danielle was saying that she started shiatsu in the 60s, around 60, 70, around 1968 in France.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a special year in France, let's say. Let's say that was the last year of her senior high school year. And she was already interested in body and spirit and working with all kinds of stuff, doing yoga. And so that was a whole journey for her, working with the body and what she could feel. And yeah, so that's about it.
How did she manage to find a teacher in 1968 in France?
No. I didn't have a teacher. So I met a Japanese girl, a Japanese student, and she gave me a shiatsu.
Oh, I see. Now
she gave me a shiatsu.
French now.
And I didn't know what she was doing, but what she did to me was, I'm speaking in English. I'm sorry.
It's okay, don't worry.
Ça a été une révélation.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, Julie, do you want to translate that into French?
Yes, it's a true revelation for her. So, as you said, she met a Japanese woman during her studies.
Wow,
and c'était quoi tes études, Danielle?
Yeah.
Bon, donc, mon année de terminale a été très déterminante dans un sens parce que j'étais très attirée par la psychologie, mais je n'ai pas fait d'études en psychologie. Par contre, je ne sais pas comment, attirée par l'Orient, le voyage, etc., je me suis inscrite à la Sorbonne en chinois et japonais.
So she was really interested in psychology. Her last year of senior high school was a really determined year for her in her career and orientation in her studies. And so she decided to study at La Sorbonne University, which is quite a famous university in Paris, and to study Oriental studies or Eastern studies. So first Chinese and then Japanese later.
Wow, that's pretty heavy duty background. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, cool.
Alors, je m'intéresse déjà beaucoup au yoga, au bouddhisme, au zen, mais même les cours de yoga à l'époque à Paris, je ne connais pas. Donc, c'est surtout à travers des lectures, mais je m'aperçois très rapidement que ça ne suffit pas et qu'il faut être initié. Et c'est à partir de là que je décide d'aller au Japon, parce qu'à l'époque, on ne pouvait pas aller en Chine. C'était très compliqué. Donc, à la fin de ma licence de chinois, je décide d'aller au Japon.
So, as she said, she was interested in yoga and Buddhist philosophies and all of that kind of area, but it was something that was really not popular back then, and it was mostly through her studies. So that's why she got into her university. But then she wanted to go abroad. She wanted to travel and to go to China. But as it was difficult, then Japan came.
Wow, yeah, amazing.
Vas-y, Dani.
Yeah.
Donc, le voyage s'est fait en Volkswagen. 6 mois de voyage à travers l'Europe, l'Inde, etc. Et je suis arrivée au Japon 6 mois après, en début de l'année 1973.
So it was 6 months of travel via Volkswagen, a Volkswagen car. So through mainland Europe and Asia, so India, and she ended up landing or arriving in Japan in 1973.
She drove to Japan in a Volkswagen.
Yes.
At the end, it was not possible. So from Hong Kong to Japan by Russian cargo. Oh, je parle anglais maintenant. En cargo russe.
Incredible.
un cargo russe de Hong Kong au Japon, 8 jours de voyage, la dernière étape.
That's incredible.
Yeah, then of course at the end it's not possible, so it had to be through a Russian cargo, 8 days of travel.
That's incredible. What a story. And then you got to Japan, and then what happened?
Alors, donc, arrivé au Japon, bon, j'ai dû travailler parce que il n'y avait plus beaucoup de finances et j'ai donné des cours de français. Par la suite, des cours de cuisine française. Et je me suis renseignée à droite, à gauche, le shiatsu, etc., enfin, aux gens que je rencontrais. Et ils ne comprenaient absolument rien de ce que je leur disais. Ils disaient shiatsu, 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 c'est quoi? Alors, je leur montrais en faisant le geste shiatsu. Alors, ils me regardaient avec un air encore plus bizarre. Ils ne comprenaient pas qu'une jeune femme étrangère, en plus, s'intéresse au shiatsu. Donc, ça a mis beaucoup de temps avant. En attendant, j'ai fait du yoga pendant quelques années. J'allais dans un temple faire de la méditation. Et c'est là que j'ai rencontré un Anglais qui connaissait Masunaga, qui commençait à enseigner, à donner un cours aux étrangers.
Okay, Julian, let's hear it.
Yes. So first, of course, with Cheer of Japan, the money, the finance side of the situation was scarce. She didn't have much money, so she started to give French lessons, French cooking classes, to walk around. And when she could, she started asking around about shiatsu. You know, do you know someone who could do shiatsu? And Japanese people, they wouldn't understand. And as soon as she would do the gesture, you know, with the hands or like trying to mimic it, then they would understand. But then it was like, why do you care about shiatsu? Why do you want to study that?
Yeah.
So it took her a couple of years to settle in Japan, know what was going on. And in the meantime, she was doing all kinds of stuff. So yoga, visiting a temple, learning more about Japanese culture, and meditations. And that's when she met an Englishman, I guess a British person, who introduced her to Masunaga's class, and that led the way to Masunaga, to actual shiatsu classes.
Right, amazing. That wasn't Michael Rose, was it, by any chance? There's another English person.
C'était pas Michael Rose, la personne, non.
Non, c'était pas lui, mais je me souviens pas de son nom. Mais avant, en attendant, j'avais quand même intégré un cours de shiatsu plutôt style Namikoshi, pendant 6 mois à peu près. Mais ça ne correspondait pas du tout à ce que je cherchais. Donc, lorsque je suis arrivée chez Masunaga, alors là, c'était exactement ce que je cherchais.
So in the meantime, she already followed some shiatsu classes. She was kind of familiar. She followed the 6-month class with kind of Namikoshi type of shiatsu, but she wasn't really feeling comfortable with it. But when she started learning with Masunaga, that was a whole other level. She felt more comfortable.
Great. So I think we should go on to the next slide then. Here we are.
Oui, là, j'ai passé un petit passage. Il faudra que j'y revienne. Mais... Donc, chez Masunaga, nous sommes un petit groupe d'une dizaine. La majorité était anglophone, australien, néo-zélandais, anglais, canadien. J'étais la seule française. Je crois qu'il y avait une italienne, mais je ne suis plus très sûre. Un néerlandais peut-être. Donc, l'enseignement de Masunaga, c'était quelqu'un d'extrêmement, on va dire, simple, naturel, humble. Il ne nous a pas du tout introduit par de la théorie, d'une façon intellectuelle, pas du tout, du tout. Donc, il ne s'encombre pas de discours. L'enseignement est basé essentiellement sur la pratique. Il fait une démonstration, on reproduit, on change de partenaire, on refait la même chose et ainsi de suite. Donc voilà, les cours se passent comme ça et petit à petit, on intègre. Mais c'est surtout de le voir, lui, travailler sa façon de bouger, de se déplacer, de manipuler le corps est complètement hypnotique. En même temps que j'observe ce qu'il fait, je me sens traversée par son énergie et son souffle. Et en intégrant
Stop you there, Danielle. Let's have some translation. Poor old Julian will be like this.
Yes. That's all right. So then Danielle is describing what was it like, the foreign classes, the classes for foreigners in Masunaga. So there were about 10 people, and they were coming from all over the world. There was a good friend of Danielle from New Zealand, from Canada, from Italy, from, I guess she was the only French person at that time, but so other British person. And Masunaga is really simple in his approach to shiatsu. There's really not much theory. He's not talking a lot. He's really humble, really modest person.
Mm-hmm.
And so his way of teaching is through mimicking, through silent demonstration and observation. So basically, he's showing something to a student, to a receiver, a patient, and then they have to mimic it. They have to do the same. So that's a really traditional way, let's say, in Japanese art, and to do that. And so they just do that, and then they change partner, they change receivers, and that's the way it goes. So there's really a lot of things you can feel, and Danielle experienced a lot of energy resonance with Masunaga. You can really feel his breath, his energy, and just the way he's moving. You can feel there's a lot of things going on, and that was really a big teaching experience as a student.
Fantastic. Yeah, that was the whole, that well done, Julian. That was the whole content of this entire slide that you just translated. Great. So let's just go back a little bit. That's right. Could you tell us a little bit about Masunaga? That you must have learned quite a bit about Masunaga, right?
Ses sources, c'était avant, je crois.
Yeah.
Yes.
Non.
Tu peux, Daniel, nous parler un peu de la vie de Masunaga?
Oui, comment il est venu.
Comment
il est venu, lui, comment il est venu au shiatsu.
Oui.
Oula, c'est tout mélangé. Par sa mère.
On dit comme ça vient, si jamais.
Tout petit, déjà, ses parents étaient déjà intéressés par le shiatsu, mais surtout sa mère qui a emmené ses 3 fils. Elle a été dans des temples formés par des moines, enfin des personnes à l'époque vraiment très, très connues dans le shiatsu. Et elle a décidé que l'un de ses fils, parce qu'elle avait des petits problèmes de santé à l'époque, et elle a trouvé que le shiatsu réagissait mieux, enfin elle réagissait mieux avec le shiatsu qu'avec des médicaments ou etc. Et elle décide sans le dire, en tout cas à ses fils, que l'un de ses fils, en tout cas, deviendrait un professionnel du shiatsu, mais il ne l'a su que plus tard. Et tu n'as pas trouvé ma feuille.
Yeah, Julian, you tell us.
Yes. So there's a whole story. It's a family story actually with Masunaga, and it's really linked. For the personally, I didn't know that, but I guess it's a famous story. But it's really linked with his mother, who used to go to. So she wasn't really keen on Western medicine at the time. It was beginning of the century, Japan. So it was a lot of new types of treating people. She was afraid of needles, apparently.
Oh, right. Wow.
Not acupuncture, I guess, but vaccines or shots.
Yeah.
So she used to bring him, and she used to go to like a temple for receiving physical therapy, like touch therapy, to a certain Hosomi sensei. I noted. That's what history remembered. But so he practiced a kind of touch physical therapy, and she had abdominal problems. She had stomach issues, and she used to go daily and for like a cure, like a prolonged treatment.
Yeah.
And so she used to bring young Shizuto with him. Yeah. And as she was so pleased with this medicine, she was so enthusiastic. She said, I have 3 sons. But it was like a secret vow. She didn't tell any of his sons. I have 3 sons. I would dedicate one to this incredible medicine so he can help suffering people.
Wow.
And so he didn't know that. He learned that much later in his life, Masunaga.
Wow, that's
So-
amazing. I didn't know that. That's a new story for me. That's incredible. Yeah.
Alors, j'ai une petite phrase que j'ai retirée d'un de ses livres, Shiatsu et médecine orientale. Pendant que ma mère me faisait le traitement sur le ventre, je ne pouvais m'empêcher de me dire, je ne pense pas qu'elle soit la meilleure en ce qui concerne la technique, mais une chose est sûre, c'est que je sens en elle un charisme dans l'art de guérir qui surpasse celui de toute autre personne. Je me demande maintenant s'il ne s'agissait pas d'une sorte de force spirituelle.
So Danielle was quoting here a quote from Masunaga from his book. I don't know the English name of his book, but I guess his main book, which is famous. So, but because so his mother, she learned about abdominal treatment then, and she was giving him treatments. So that's a quote about that. During the session with my mother, so when she gave me abdominal treatment, I couldn't help but wonder. I don't think she's the best at it, especially regarding the technique. But one thing's for sure, what I experienced in her treatment is a kind of charisma in the art of healing, which goes beyond anything I've ever experienced with someone else. I wonder now, as he's grown up, if there was some kind of spiritual power behind all of this. So that's illustrating this whole era for him.
Yes. Amazing. So can you tell us about this? I found this such an interesting slide, very interesting, because it tells us a lot about Masunaga's deeper thoughts, spiritual thoughts about shiatsu and why he created yokai. So could you tell us a little bit about this slide?
Est-ce que tu peux nous en dire un peu plus, Daniel, à propos de là, tout ce qui est résumé sur cette diapositive, parce que ça nous parle un peu de son esprit de Masunaga derrière yokai, comment il a créé yokai.
Alors, il crée son institut yokai qui signifie Association du roi de la médecine, en référence avec la philosophie chinoise, enfin le taoïsme. Le rôle du roi est de réunir en l'homme le ciel et la terre. Donc, selon Masunaga, c'est le rôle du thérapeute. S'il y a perte de lien avec le ciel et la terre, il y a rupture d'équilibre, perte de son identité, de ses racines, perte de contact avec soi.
So here Daniel is speaking about the meaning and all the philosophy behind the whole yokai institute, how he created it, Masunaga, and what does it mean for him. So yokai, I means medicine, O means king, and Kai means association, reunion. So the King of Medicine Association, we can translate that. So that's a reference to Buddhist and Taoist thinking. So being king in this Chinese thought, that means to unite heaven and earth, or the sky or earth, which is for Masunaga. He wanted to emphasize that, and for him, that's the purpose of all therapists. So if this connection between heaven and earth is lost or broken in the individual, that's also an interruption in the sense of self or oneself, and so of one's identity. So we lose then, if we lose heaven and earth, this connection, we lose our origin, our roots, and our connection with ourselves. Right. And so that's the big motto of Masunaga and this whole underlying purpose of his Yokai Institute.
Amazing. Wonderful, yeah. And what about this quote? The therapeutic practice, one must first clarify one's own heart.
Et cette citation, il n'est pas de pratique thérapeutique sans savoir soi-même clarifier son cœur.
Oui, donc ça c'est une chose essentielle dans la pratique thérapeutique pour Masunaga. Quand on parle de cœur dans le sens oriental, c'est cœur et esprit. C'est pas comme que le cœur chez nous. Quand on parle du cœur, ça veut dire aussi l'esprit.
So of course that's something really central in Masunaga's thinking in Chinese thought. thought. If you versed a little bit about Chinese medicine, maybe you know that when we speak about the heart, doesn't mean the physical heart, it's the shin, the kokoro. So that means the spirit and the human heart as well. So clarifying one's own heart or purifying one's own heart is essential for any therapist.
Yeah, wonderful. Isn't that wonderful? And I noticed that you made a point there about how that the spirit of underneath Oriental medicine with the meridian perception and everything, he kind of brought that back into shiatsu. Yeah.
Et donc là, oui, Daniel, tu as voulu insister sur le fait que cette philosophie orientale que Masunaga a ramenée, il a aussi mis avec donc ce traitement des méridiens, ce traitement des méridiens.
Oui, Masunaga va vraiment se focaliser sur la perception des méridiens, parce que bon, il a été formé, comme tous les professionnels du shiatsu, à l'école de Namikoshi. Mais les méridiens n'avaient plus l'importance qu'ils avaient avant. Ils étaient plutôt focalisés sur les tsubo, sur les points. Donc Masunaga va réorienter le shiatsu à travers les méridiens. Il va se focaliser vraiment sur les méridiens. Ça va être l'intérêt de toute son expérience, sa recherche. Toute sa vie a été concentrée sur les méridiens.
So the whole life of Masunaga was his research and his work as a therapist and a researcher in shiatsu and medical studies, let's say, is on working with the meridians. What that means is perceiving them, and working with the perception one could have of the meridians, because as a shiatsu practitioner of that time in Japan, he was trained in Namikoshi style, so they were more focused on tsubo, on the points themselves.
Yes.
And so it's like taking a broader picture of it. So that's what, and feeling it rather than just applying pressure on specific points for specific effects. So that was his work. So feeling the meridians, feeling them concretely.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
En tout cas, le but de Masunaga, c'est de réintégrer l'esprit philosophique de la médecine chinoise dans le shiatsu, puisque ça, c'était un peu perdu, on va dire. Bon, l'occidentalisation du Japon, malheureusement, à cette époque, c'était le cas, et c'est pourquoi l'école Namikoshi a été la seule école officielle, parce qu'ils ont intégré l'anatomie d'abord. Ils ont remplacé les méridiens plus par les tsubo. Bon, Ampuku n'était plus très, très pratiqué. Donc, Masunaga va réintégrer ça. Le travail d'Ampuku a été très important dans sa pratique.
So, when we talk about meridians and what we talked about Masunaga's work, his life work is to reintroduce and to bring back Chinese thought, traditional Chinese thought, traditional Chinese background back into shiatsu, because it were kind of forgotten back then. So as we said, the main shiatsu school at that time in Japan, the 50s and 60s, were Namikoshi. And so especially during and after World War II, there was a second wave of Western thought coming to Japan, and a lot of traditional things, a lot of energy related or traditional related stuff. It was it's a whole conversation as well, but martial arts.
Yes.
It's a whole page about Japanese history. So all of that were kind of banned or censored right after World War II, or we couldn't talk about it. And it was, if you want to get accepted back into Japanese society or make a name for yourself, you have to be more Western, basically. So that's why Namikoshi, he focused more about anatomy work and tsubo, as we said, so the points, and that has nothing bad about it, but they tend to forget about a lot of knowledge. And for example, Ampuku which was the traditional abdominal work, traditional belly work, Masunaga experienced as a kid, it was forgotten. So he introduced that as well so he worked a lot with Ampuku, and he worked a lot to reintroduce Chinese thought about in shiatsu.
Yes, and here's another example of that. This idea of shiatsu is Zen between people, because he was a lay Zen Buddhist, Zen or a lay Buddhist, wasn't he? He was interested in Buddhism as well.
Donc il y a cette idée aussi, quand on parlait de pensée traditionnelle à propos du zen, il y a cette citation-là que le shiatsu est un zen d'homme à homme. Et Cliff disait que c'était un pratiquant laïque du zen, Masunaga.
Yeah, so tell us more about this slide.
En tant que thérapeute, bon,
Uh-oh. Just give her a second to reconnect. Looks like internet. She's back again. Yeah, there we go.
On t'a, Danielle.
Yeah. Yep, she's back.
Je fais rien.
Yeah.
On t'écoute.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Ah, je peux parler?
Yep.
Oui.
Oh,
okay.
Just let her reconnect and I'm sure she'll...
Je vais résoudre tous tes problèmes, je vais te guérir, voilà, c'est pas ça du tout. Pour Masunaga, il y a un échange et ce que l'on donne au patient ou au receveur a une interaction avec le praticien, le thérapeute, en fonction des pays. Et on développe, on approfondit quelque chose, il y a un retour sur soi, un approfondissement de la connaissance de soi. C'est ce qui est très intéressant dans ce travail.
So his main focus as a therapist, the inner posture of the therapist,
yes,
is not about I will fix you, you have such so and so problems. It is my job to do that to you. It is a cooperative process. And so Masunaga, he emphasized a lot about exchanges between the patient and the therapist, giver and receiver. There's whole terms we're going to see afterwards, I'm sure, about the exchanges and the interactions. And that was really a central thing of his practice and, let's say, his theory about shiatsu, the way he practiced it. So that's really the core of his practice.
Yes.
Working with the patient and feeling this exchange.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Alors bien sûr, au-delà de toute cette connaissance de médecine orientale, il a fait des études de psychologie et il a aussi une approche autre, c'est-à-dire une approche des émotions. Il est très intéressé par la Gestalt, par exemple. Il ne nous en parle pas, hein. C'est des choses qu'on sait, mais il ne nous en a jamais parlé. Mais en tout cas, dans son travail, c'est quelque chose qui passe, quoi. Cette énergie-là, il l'a en plus et il y a effectivement un travail émotionnel qui se fait avec cette pratique de shiatsu. Ça n'est pas toujours facile pour tout le monde de recevoir de cette façon et d'avoir des réactions émotionnelles. Ça ne convient pas à tout le monde. Bon, on voit bien parmi les élèves qui viennent, ceux qui restent, ceux qui ne peuvent pas rester. Et pour les personnes qui viennent aussi pour une séance, qui vont poursuivre ou pas, ça n'est pas toujours évident. Mais voilà, c'est l'intérêt de son travail.
So we didn't talk about it, but Masunaga, he studied psychology in university. And so he was really interested about Gestalt therapy and, of course, the whole Western perspective way of seeing, analyzing, perceiving emotions, the whole psyche way of doing that.
Yeah.
So that's what he brought into shiatsu. And I mean, that's a psychological term, but counter transfer, that's a big part, also a psychological process, but still he brought a lot of those elements into shiatsu to make sure it will feel the whole dimensions of the human being. And so, of course, that's not suited for everybody. Everyone doesn't want that. That's quite intense. And Danielle said you can see that the students coming in and coming out. So yeah, some people will stay. And
Right.
it's quite intense to receive that as a patient as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Would you like a question? We've got some interesting questions here, and I thought this might be a good one from Francesco, because it's relevant to your experience studying with Masnaga about how he taught the meridians. And this is the question.
okay. On va prendre une question.
Yeah. I'll read it in English first. Can you tell possibly with an example how you can feel meridians and how Masnaga taught you to perceive the meridians? So, do you want to translate that for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Est-ce que tu peux nous dire, Daniel, si possible avec un exemple, comment tu perçois les méridiens et comment Masunaga vous apprenait à percevoir les méridiens?
Comme je l'ai expliqué, rien de plus. Bon, je pense que c'est mes 2-3 dernières années de mon séjour au Japon où j'ai suivi les cours de Masunaga. Bon, c'était plusieurs fois par semaine, si je me souviens bien, tous les après-midi. J'allais aussi aux cours donnés aux professionnels japonais. Bon, là, il y avait un peu plus de théorie, mais je ne me souviens plus très bien. Mais par contre, pour ce qui est de nous, de notre groupe, bon, il n'était que dans la pratique, la démonstration. C'est son énergie qui faisait qu'on s'adaptait pour être dans ce qu'il transmettait. Bon, moi, je l'ai vécu comme ça, en tout cas, à travers le souffle qu'on percevait, sa façon d'être positionné, son déplacement. Et puis, on faisait ce qu'il nous montrait, c'est tout. Je ne peux pas dire plus. Par contre, je suis retournée au Japon 20 ans après et il y avait 2 femmes à l'époque parce qu'à l'Institut Yokai, il y avait une pièce pour les cours et une salle pour les praticiens. Et tous les praticiens travaillaient ensemble, les uns à côté des autres. Et parmi tous ces praticiens, il y avait 2 femmes. 2 femmes. C'est pourquoi, effectivement, quand je posais la question du shiatsu, moi, en tant que jeune femme, ça, ils ne comprenaient pas parce que c'est un métier d'homme, essentiellement. Donc, il y avait 2 femmes. Et quand je suis retournée 20 ans après, ces 2 femmes, c'était elles qui enseignaient, qui ont organisé un stage d'été de 2 semaines où des gens venaient de l'étranger, des Japonais qui vivaient à l'étranger, des professionnels. Et j'ai pu participer à ce stage avec ces 2 femmes, Kono Sensei et Takarama Sensei. J'en ai parlé dans mon livre et j'ai retrouvé leur nom tout à l'heure. Et alors, l'une des 2, Kono Sensei, la plus âgée, bon, elles sont toutes les 2 décédées maintenant, je crois. Elle m'a dit, oui, je regrette beaucoup de ne pas avoir posé plus de questions à Masunaga Sensei. Mais ça ne se fait pas de poser des questions. Donc, nous non plus, on essayait de poser des questions, mais il nous écrivait en gros sur son tableau « not do ». Alors, not do, c'est-à-dire lâcher prise. Lâcher prise le mental, vous apprendrez plus tard, quoi. En gros, c'était ça, quoi.
Okay, tell us, Julian.
Okay, so I will translate. So Danielle talked about her experience in Japan. So she used to go 2 or 3 times a week, the afternoon, to Masunaga's class. She would go to other professionals working with shiatsu, and then in those places there were more theory. But so that was like her last 2 and 3 years when she was in Japan.
Yeah.
So about Masunaga, as she said, basically her answer is I already said everything. There's nothing much more to say because she didn't tell us much.
Yeah.
But still, she's explaining,
Yeah.
So Masunaga, he was silent. It was silent demonstration. So you could be taught or you could feel through perception and through sensing him and through his posture, his breath, through how he was moving his body, how he was moving the patient's body, all of those adaptations.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really nothing much said or to say to that. It was inspiring in all sense of the word. And then Danielle said that she came back to Japan 20 years after. And back then there was like 20 people working together, and most of them were men. It was only 2 women. And so 20 years after, those 2 women, they became teachers. There were, I think, if I understood correctly, c'était les seules, ces femmes à être professeurs, c'est ça?
Oui, elle est dans à Yokai, sur le même lieu.
So they were the only, so amongst all of those people, 2 women, they were the only teachers in Yokai, who 20 years after they became teachers. So that's why this whole topic about, feminine perspective about Masunaga, the mostly male practitioners, and then the female, they became teachers. So one of them was Kono Sensei, and so Danielle, they talked together, and now she passed away. But when Danielle talked to her, so Kono Sensei, she was full of regrets because she said, "Oh, I wished I asked more questions to Masunaga Sensei." Back then you couldn't ask more questions. You couldn't ask any question. It was not something one would think of doing, or it was not really permissible. And that's the example she said. When one would ask a question, Masunaga would just write in capital letters on the blackboard, "Not do." So he would pass the message that it's not possible, and basically the message was to drop the mind. Just drop the mind, and that's really a Zen thing. Drop the body and mind.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay, let's just go on. We think we're covering most of the slides. We've just got about 15 minutes left, so I think we're going to be fine. We've covered all this. So this is just more of a personal thing, the impact of Masunaga on your life. So.
Oui, peut-être on peut revenir sur ça, ou aller sur ça. Voilà, l'impact de Masunaga sur toi, Danielle, après coup ou pendant.
Yeah, so tell us.
Bon, alors pour conclure, en tout cas sur ce que j'ai dit sur Masunaga, son idéal était de parvenir à une forme de médecine holistique unique qui soit une synthèse harmonieuse, idéale des médecines orientales et occidentales, une médecine véritablement faite pour l'homme et au service de l'homme, devant permettre à chacun de se réaliser dans la totalité de son être, corps, âme, esprit, et d'accomplir sur cette terre la mission propre qui est la sienne.
So still Daniel wanted to conclude about Masunaga's role, or Masunaga's mission, let's say, or what he brought to Shiatsu, or his ideal about medicine. So his idea of Masunaga was to develop a unique form of holistic medicine. That's what we talk about psychology. So it would consist of an harmonious combination of both Western and Eastern approaches. It was really a medical practice made for mankind and serving mankind, allowing everyone to fulfill and to realize all aspects of oneself, a real body, soul, and spirit, medicine, and to realize our own mission on this planet.
Yeah, so there's a real spiritual aspect there, isn't there? Yeah.
Donc il y avait vraiment un aspect très spirituel à propos de ça aussi.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, great. So did you want to just talk a little bit? We've got a few more questions here. I don't know if you want. How about this question? We've just had this coming from Lily, which is, did you experience shiatsu from Masunaga, and how was it? Did he ever work on you in the classes?
Est-ce que tu as expérimenté un shiatsu de Masunaga et c'était comment?
Ah oui, bien sûr, j'ai expérimenté un shiatsu de Masunaga. Eh bien, comment l'entrée en matière, c'était comment ça va? Il savait que j'avais une petite fille. Comment va ta petite fille? Voilà quoi. Bon, après, il a fait sa séance. Il m'a demandé à la fin si ça allait bien. Voilà, c'est rien de plus. Hein. Mais bon, évidemment, c'était formidable. C'était formidable d'en avoir reçu une.
Ok, je vais traduire ça. Puis si tu veux dire d'autres choses, je t'en prie. So Daniel said that so it was quite formidable. It was quite an amazing experience, but it was at the same time quite simple. There was a brief chat before. Masunaga knew that she had a daughter. She had a little kid, so they were chatting a little bit beforehand, like, oh, so how is your daughter, and so on. And then he moved quickly to the shiatsu. And that was it. Basically, that's what Danielle said. But it was an amazing experience.
En général, ça se passait comme ça. J'ai reçu après un shiatsu de ces deux femmes. Et oui, c'est pas plus compliqué que ça. Elles ne passent pas plus de temps. Elles passent beaucoup de temps. Ils passent beaucoup de temps à la séance. En mpuku au début, à la fin. Les étirements, c'est des séances qui durent, oui, plus d'une heure, 1h20. Donc, il n'y a pas une conversation avant, après, juste l'essentiel, quoi. Et l'essentiel à la fin, est-ce que tout va bien? Et en général, tout le monde repart avec tout va bien.
So they were quite long-lasting session, more than 1 hour, 1 hour and 20 minutes. That's what Danielle said. And she said also that he would go straight to the essential. Yes. Again, maybe a little chat, but not much chatting. And he would do some ampuku. He would do quite some ampuku, maybe stretchings. She also had the opportunity of receiving shiatsu from the Masunaga's wives. So
no, ladies.
Ladies?
The ladies I met 20 years after.
Ah, yes. These teachers.
Kono Sensei, Takahama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and at the end, the most important thing was, are you fine? Is everything fine? And most of the time it was like this.
Yes.
Everyone was happy.
Brilliant. Okay. So do you want to just talk a little bit about this slide? I mean, about the experience that you've had there with shiatsu?
Alors, en tout cas, ce qui est très important, c'est l'aspect, il se concentre sur l'aspect yin, qu'il définit comme la cause du déséquilibre.
So he focuses mainly on most of the time, or mainly, on the yin aspects of things, which is considered the root cause of disease, of imbalances. So a yin approach of shiatsu.
Yes.
Ce sera la base de son traitement par les méridiens qu'il qualifie de kyo, c'est-à-dire yin, ou jitsu, yang.
So that's the basic foundation of his treatments, and so then they are based on kyo, empty meridians, and jitsu, full meridians.
Yes.
Donc, si on veut parler de féminin, donc on peut dire que Masunaga avait une approche par le yin du féminin. C'est fondamental dans son travail, révolutionnaire dans une société où le principe masculin domine. Et c'est peut-être aussi l'une des raisons qui a fait qu'il a été mal perçu. Enfin, son travail n'a pas été... Alors, il réintroduit Ampuku, qui avait disparu aussi, qui n'était plus pratiqué dans les traitements de shiatsu, le diagnostic du ventre. Bon, dans l'ensemble, on peut dire qu'il avait une vision éclairée par le spirituel, mais une vision sans doute trop idéaliste pour cette époque, basée sur le matérialisme et le productivisme.
So really we can say that his approach is a yin-based approach, and especially in his environment, because the Japan at that time, 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was a society based on materialistic needs and a want for productivism. And still now, even Japan is we can say that, a male-oriented society. So by the quality of his listening, his welcoming approaches, Masunaga, that's one part of his yin approach. As we said, he brought back Anpuku, so working on the yin, working on the abdominal and the belly, and so on. So, and again, he was a spiritual person. He wanted to that needed to be part of his treatments, of his approach to shiatsu. He couldn't put that apart. So all of those elements made that Masunaga a yin approach, and also he was kind of idealistic in his approach. So maybe that's one of the big reasons that he fought a lot, and I don't know what was the disease he got, but that was maybe one of the reasons he was a little bit separate of that time. He was
definitely. I know that his lectures and everything were very popular. I mean, he was a great thinker, wasn't he? A great innovator. I've got another question here, just another question before we go on, which is from Bataillon, I think it is, Francois. And it's about the Masunaga meridians. It's more of a technical question about the Masunaga extensions into the arms. So do you want to translate that into English for us?
Yeah, sure. So Masunaga meridians doesn't have exactly the same channels, the same pathways that the one we can find in acupuncture, especially the extensions, liver in the arm, heart in the leg, etc. Does they have extensive researches on those pathways? Has it been published, or is it any work? I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
En anglais, mais j'ai compris, ça va.
En français, tu peux répondre, je traduirai.
Bon, oui, effectivement, il a retrouvé les extensions des méridiens. Ils existaient déjà, mais je pense que ça a été simplifié dans la médecine chinoise et il les a retrouvés. Bon, c'était un chercheur. Par sa pratique, par sa sensibilité, il a retrouvé. Après, il y a quelques méridiens qui sont différents, effectivement. C'est sa sensibilité à lui. Rien d'autre à dire.
So those extensions, they already existed in it's two-part answer. It was first his research in classical medicine, classical Chinese medicine, and then it was also his own sensitivity. So of the affinity, the connections he could make with those extensions of meridian. So based on those two things, there's nothing much more to say to that.
Yeah. I think you'll find that many of the extensions are related to the 6 divisions, which is part of his teaching, his theory teaching. So a lot of it is explained by that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Cliff, I will translate still, but that's good information.
En français.
En français. Donc Cliff disait que les extensions qu'il voyait étaient aussi une grande partie des 6 couches, ce qu'on appelle les 6 couches ou les 6 grands méridiens. Et voilà, c'était une clé de compréhension par rapport à ça et dans ces théories.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the answers are for that. Okay, the conclusion. We've just got 5 minutes left. So if you could just give us a 2-minute conclusion, we can do the rest of the slides.
Alors, j'ai pas terminé. Hein.
Yeah.
Alors, ça. Alors, oui, j'ai mis quelques années quand même avant de comprendre un certain nombre de choses. Bon, j'ai passé 7 ans au Japon, on va dire, mais dans la communication avec les Japonais, j'ai compris que nous, on est dans une communication sur le plan des idées, une communication intellectuelle, et avec les Japonais, c'est une communication d'ordre sensible. Et ça, on met du temps avant de comprendre ça. Et ce que j'ai comme exemple, c'est les Japonais disent par exemple Kimochi gai, l'état de mon ki est bon. L'état de mon ki est bon. Bon, ben, c'est sympa. Et, et ça veut dire que mon souffle circule. Mon souffle circule, je me sens bien, quoi. Hein, bon. C'est vrai qu'on a très peu l'occasion, nous, de s'exprimer comme ça. Ou alors, il y a aussi Kiniaou, je rencontre quelqu'un, on a passé une journée à visiter une partie du Japon sans trop communiquer. Et puis à la fin, cette personne m'a dit Kiniaou, c'est-à-dire nos ki s'accordent. Donc,
Je vais traduire.
Nous, on dirait nous sommes sur la même longueur d'onde. Là, c'est nos souffles s'accordent. Donc voilà, ce sont des petits exemples pour montrer qu'il faut quand même un certain nombre d'années avant de se connecter et de comprendre un peu le mode de fonctionnement japonais.
So it took several years, a lot of time to really dive into this whole universe, as you talked about Masunaga, the perception, to drop the mind, the feeling, what we talked about today. So there was two Japanese phrases, two expressions that really sum up all of that. And because the communication are really different between so Westerners, let's say, maybe French people, maybe British people, I don't know, and Japanese people. So it's really more communicating on feeling-based communication and sensitivity, feeling the harmony, feeling what's going on between people. So the first term is kimochi gai. That literally means the chi is good. There's good chi. So it's well circulated. The breathing is good. It's well circulated. So that's something that happens between individuals, which translate as sensitivity, you know. And the other thing is kiniao. So another example Danielle gave is that you can walk around with a person whole day, and then at the end of the day, the person said, "Oh, kiniao." So that means our chi are matching. There's they are meeting.
Yes.
So are we on the same page? Is this some same level of vibration maybe? So it's difficult to translate, of course, because it has several meanings, but that's really two simple examples because they are used daily, commonly by Japanese people, but are really a key part of Japanese culture and a way of communication, of way of feeling. And so big part of Masunaga's work as well. And for Westerners, for Danielle, it was something to go into.
Fantastic. Okay, we have to finish up now. We've just got 2 minutes, and I wanted to do this. I want to share this handout with everyone because it's got all the details. I'm going to just share this now. So if you want to download this, it's got all the links. So you can find out more about Danielle's work and her website and everything. So it's being downloaded now. Do you want to translate that for us, Judith?
Oui, donc là, vous avez toutes les infos sur Daniel, qui peut-être tu peux le dire toi-même, tu peux te présenter, Daniel, si tu es à Marseille, je veux pas. Et puis les stages que tu organises.
Oui, justement, j'aurais voulu parler de ça, l'héritage au féminin, qu'est-ce que j'ai apporté de plus. Oui, j'ai au fil du temps mis en relation le shiatsu et la danse des 5 éléments. Donc moi, je me suis beaucoup investie au-delà des méridiens, plutôt dans l'élément, le sens, l'énergie, ce que l'on ressent à travers chacun de ces éléments. Donc j'ai fait beaucoup de stages, j'organise des stages autour du shiatsu et la danse des 5 éléments, par exemple, où le matin, on fait du shiatsu, on travaille sur un élément ou deux, et l'après-midi, on danse cet élément avec la musique qui correspond et aussi la couleur du vêtement. Et c'est vrai que ces stages ont énormément apporté dans la connaissance, plutôt le ressenti de l'élément.
Okay, tell us, Julian.
Formidable, magnifique. Donc, so Danielle was talking about what she her own part in the feminine legacy, a feminine perspective of Masunaga, and hopefully she would have liked to have more time to talk about it, but I don't know, maybe another time. But
Sure.
so she talked about the 5 elements and what she's doing now in her workshops and seminar, what she took time in organizing. So they would spend, for example, the morning working on 1 or 2 elements.
Yes.
And then they would focus on that element in the afternoon through movement and so through dancing. And so they
great.
would that's Danielle, what she talked about, and she's really keen on that, the posture, the dancing, the movement, feeling, all of that. So it's a whole process, it's a whole work about feeling what is there all about, but this element. So a specific dance, movement, the color, appropriate music. So all of that, it's what she's doing in her workshops and seminars in south of France. So that's really a whole part of the work, and it's really good for learning how to feel more, maybe feel more, think less, and integrating that and the elements, in her work. That's work.
Fantastic. And they've all got the link there, and there's links in the email that comes out with this replay, so they'll be able to get in touch with you and find out more. Okay, so next week we have Mathieu Venet and shiatsu in the sports world, just for a bit of contrast there.
Voilà, et donc la semaine prochaine, pareil avec le contraste, un autre praticien du Sud, mais Mathieu Vernet, qui parlera du shiatsu dans le monde du sport.
So now all I've got to say is this one image of you driving across all the way to Japan in a Volkswagen in 1973. I'm never going to forget that image.
Très belle image de Danielle qui conduit dans sa Volkswagen jusqu'au Japon.
Okay, so thank you so much, both of you. You've worked so hard, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure if you look on the chat, you'll see loads and loads of hearts going in there. You can see loads of hearts in the chat. Everyone had a wonderful time. And it's just so wonderful to meet someone with such a long history in shiatsu. I just want to say thank you from everyone to you. Do you want to just translate that for me, and then we'll...
Oui, avec plaisir. Merci à vous, c'était très chouette, content de partager tout ça. Moi, je remercie Danielle aussi, de pouvoir entendre son histoire, de pouvoir la traduire aussi. Et c'était super, c'était un très bon moment, et sans doute à une prochaine fois.
And thank you to Theophile and Diana for all their work in the chat. And we'll see you next week.
Merci à Diane et à Théophile dans le chat, et à la semaine prochaine.
Merci à vous. On n'a pas eu le temps de tout développer, mais bon.
Ciao. I'm going to end the session.